log, stardate 7403.6.
Are you pretending to do a captain's log?
I saw that, but I don't believe it. A Vendorian doctor.
Shapeshifter? Look, I can set you up with somebody great on the Cerritos. There's that Philosian and Tactical. She seems like a nice plant person.
Intelligent plants?
Orion's little game of neutrality and piracy is over.
For your information, mini Orions haven't been pirates for over 5 years!
Time to take this puppy off its leash! Warp me!
Hello, interwebs, and welcome to the Drawn to Trek podcast. I am your intrepid. I probably shouldn't go with intrepid because that's like an actual Star Trek title sort of thing. But regardless, I am your host, Jessie Gender, and we're here to talk about the latest episode of Star Trek Lower Decks, Season 2, Episode 3, Mugato, Gumato,
all of those.
Yeah. Well, before we get too much further, I should introduce my co-host, the lovely Aaron Harvey.
Thank you very much. It's I'm just trying to figure out how to pronounce any of our names at this point.
Arun.
Yeah, I think we did that last time too. It's
yep.
Gender,
We only have one joke.
Mender.
Yeah, we only have. Really, we're just very clever, and we only have one joke, and we'll just run it into the ground. So yeah.
Oh, so we're Saturday Night Live. No.
Yeah. Ooh, burn.
Ooh, sorry. That was the first thing that came to my mind. There's probably something more repetitive than that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. This is where we're gonna get all our hot takes out. We're gonna air all our grievances. Suck at SNL. This has now become the Suck at SNL podcast.
That's what happens when you have improvisers who have their own opinions. It's like,
Yep. God, yeah, I stopped watching SNL a long time ago. But
I know I'm bad about ending scenes, so I shouldn't complain. But I feels like Saturday Night Live always has the skit that's like, "Oh, that's funny," and it was funny 10 minutes ago when you should have stopped. You know, it's just like they just don't know how to end. It just kind of peters off, or it just goes on way too long. Like me.
Yeah,
so I'll be quiet now.
Hey, you're talking to the gal who has like 40-minute long videos every week where like a 10-minute video will do. So I can't complain about not knowing where to end things.
Fair enough.
Well, welcome to my neurodivergent brain where like I have to, whenever I think about something, I need to like express every single thought I ever had on that subject. So
I feel like I have to like take a journey to get to the point. So it's like I'm going through all the different touchstones and you have to come along with me when I do that.
Yep. We'll get there, but we're going to make 10 stops and get some ice cream along the way.
But that's what makes us, that's us. That's why people listen to us, I hope.
Honestly, that's what makes us Trekkies, really.
Yes.
I mean, that's the true start. I mean, look at Rutherford. Rutherford basically does that too, so.
Very true.
Yeah.
Cool.
Well, speaking of Rutherford, let's actually talk about what we're here for instead of our hot SNL takes.
Our Mugato Gumato.
Mugato, Gumato, Gumato, you say Gumato, I say Mugato.
Didn't we actually have, we were going to do that. We had a song, and that was one of those in there.
Oh, yeah. Well, I stole it from my you haven't seen it yet, but my actual review of the episode on my YouTube channel starts off with that, so.
Okay.
I stole it. It's fine. I'm a rip-off person. It's fine. It's no big deal. But yeah, we're here, like I said, to talk about the this is the fourth episode, sorry.
Oh, yes, I just didn't change the graphic. Sorry about that. Yes, it is the fourth episode.
Yeah. But yeah, no, this is the fourth episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Lower Decks, Mugato Gumato, as best as I can pronounce it. Trying to think the best way to start off with this episode. This episode is kind of more of a Star Trek the Original Series reference one, because the basic plot is we have a planet where there's a bunch of the Mugatos, the aliens from Star Trek the Original Series, Private Little War, hanging out, and they shouldn't be there. So the Cerritos is sent on a mission to figure out what the hell is going on here.
Another animal control mission, basically.
Exactly. And so that's basically the plot of our episode. So I guess the best way to start is, what are your overall thoughts on the episode?
Ooh. This is going to be a more rough one for me, I think, because my overall thoughts were, if this was the first episode, which I could kind of see it almost being the first episode, as just sort of like setting the scene and having them on an adventure, I don't know what I would think of the rest of the series, because it has a lot of, to me, pointless grossness. And, you know, just there's vomiting, there's eating poop, there's just, yeah. And I know that's probably one of the reasons I really can't watch Rick and Morty, although everybody's told me I need to watch it and that I'd love it. It's just something
It
about
gets
that.
less... It gets, don't want to say less gross, but more intentional with its grossness in later seasons of that show. But I hear what you're saying on this.
Yeah, and this
episode.
show, and this didn't, like, I wouldn't be like, oh my God, I'm never going to watch the show again, or I'm throwing up or something like that. It was just like, ew, why did we have to see that? So it felt, the episode felt slightly unfocused, I guess is what I would say. It's like,
that's
normally when you and I go like, okay, well, I'll take, you know, you'll take this plot, I'll do this one, you'll do that one, but they go back and forth between each other so much that it feels like they can't stay with the scene for more than 2 seconds, and that's a weird comment to make about Lower Decks because it is so rapid fire. But this just felt like, okay, pick something, stay there.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you. So on one hand, the grossness doesn't bother me, and actually the gross scene in this bit, I was fine with. And actually, so we're talking about, there's a scene, just to bring it up here since we're kind of touching on it. There's that scene where the Mugatos just bone each other in one.
Oh, that didn't. Honestly, that didn't bother me because that's like, okay, whatever.
Okay.
No, that's, I mean, because
okay.
They didn't. There was
that felt
Gene
Roddenberry's vision. Like
that
felt
very
like
much.
Gene Roddenberry's sex vision. To me, I had no problem with that.
Yeah, no, because to me it's like that's not. There wasn't anything explicit. It was the concept of it, and I guess if you are more prudish and that is quote unquote gross to you, I think I was more of the physical, like literally, like, you know, Boimler gets socked in the gut by Mariner playing Ambujitsu. And throws up green vomit somehow. Like that was just like, ugh, I don't know.
Yeah, I guess, yeah. I mean, none of that stuff. Honestly, none of that stuff really bothered me. I think the criticism that I will sort of back you up though. This might be my least favorite episode of the show overall, just hands down. And I feel sad about saying that, but I really just did not love this episode. And I think the reason is kind of what you're saying. Is it felt very unfocused, and the plot, the character arc here, with Rutherford and Boimler being worried about Mariner. Basically, the whole conceit is like Rutherford and Boimler start to get this feeling that maybe Mariner might be a secret black ops agent, and they get this from the bartender.
Otis.
I hated that. Otis. I hated this storyline because it's one of those storylines where it is built around characters not talking to each other, and if they had a simple 2-second conversation, which they do at the episode, everything gets resolved. Right. And so it kind of just goes about this whole thing with Boimler and Rutherford just having a misconception of Mariner, and if they had just stopped to actually ask her about it for 2 seconds, which they had ample opportunity to do, none of this would have happened. And it's just there to sort of build up this conceit and conflict within the episode. And what frustrates me further is that while the whole episode is built around that idea, they actually had a much more compelling arc right there in the episode, because when in that one scene where Mariner gets her foot trapped and the boys have to try and rescue her, she brings up the fact that it's like, oh, you guys don't talk to me, and I don't feel like you're including me, and I don't feel like I really can like be on the same level as you all the time. And they sort of feeling like, well, you always beat us up, you're always more capable than us, and we don't feel like we can be on the same level with you, which is something that was shown in the cold open of the episode, which I actually think was really, really good character building. It's like that right there, that arc was really strong and focused on character. And if that had been what it built on, like Rutherford and Boimler come down, like they get sent on this mission and they're like, we're going to be the ones to try and take charge and trying to stick themselves in front of Mariner, and Mariner sort of like, and them sort of causing them things like they screw up the mission because they don't get how to be that kind of person that Mariner is, but they're able to solve it their own way later on. That is actually would have been a really strong character arc that is there in the episode, but it eschews that in for this more kind of misconception plot.
Well, yeah, and what I was related to that, and this is what I instantly thought of, is that Lower Decks is a great comedy, and it uses tropes of other shows and other time periods and stuff, but puts it together in a 21st century kind of way. This feels like it could have been a plot from any 1980s sitcom.
Yep.
As far as the whole misconception thing. It's like, oh no, we think that our mom's actually a secret agent and they don't, or something dumb like that. I'm going to take that out. But yeah, so I think that it was, like you said, it was lazy in that sense. I don't want to... It's weird. It's hard when you, actually know what it takes to put a TV show together, and then you say, oh, that person was lazy. It's like, you don't want to do that, but at the same time...
Yeah, I'm not here to hate... I'm not here to hate on the... I know sometimes the writers listen to our stuff, so I'm not here to hate on them, and I'm not sitting here they're awful, or anything like that. I guess my point more is I'm used to Lower Decks being...
exceptional,
tightly written.
Yeah,
because it feels like they do 10 episodes a season, and they work really, really hard. You can see it in every single episode that while this show only is 20 minutes, they use every second of that 20 minutes to their fullest. And this episode
felt
if this
long.
Episode was if this episode was part of a 20 episode show where we got 20 episodes a season and it got to be, it's this would have been just fine. But for a show that I'm just so used to being really concise, condensed, really just making every moment count to its fullest, this one didn't feel like it was doing that as strongly. And it's frustrating because I could see clearly where the episode could have been just a little bit stronger. And so that's, I think, what makes this one a little bit more frustrating to me, just because I feel like if this one had baked in the oven just a little bit longer, in my opinion, I feel like this could have been a really, really strong episode. But as it is, it comes up, and I don't want to say this is something that I should say. This is my least favorite episode of Lower Decks so far, at least just sort of my initial feelings on it, just sort of looking at it. The worst episode of Lower Decks is still a good episode compared to everything else. So I don't want to hate on this too harshly.
No, I agree.
This is solid, fun. I enjoy the stuff that's here.
And there's some really good, fun stuff inside
tight.
there. And also... there's a lot of emotional beats that are stuck inside of that story that might have been a little bit more traditional, but at least we're exploring characters where in some other show that might not be that. They could just end up in the same place they were when they were done with the show. These they've learned something about each other at this point, at least, and it's not reset, I'm assuming, in the next episode.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the thing, is this is something I've been praising this entire season, and while I've been a little bit critical of the physical stakes of the show, I think the show has done such a great job at emotional follow through with these characters. And I feel like this episode had the capability, as I said before, there is a kernel of a really strong emotional arc for Rutherford and Boimler and Mariner's relationship here, but ultimately it just kind of gets lost in the shuffle of this sort of other plot that feels a little bit weaker and a little bit more misdirecting.
What I do appreciate is that it was actually a Boimler Rutherford combo. It was her relationship with the group as opposed to her relationship with Boimler or one specific person. It was this is how everyone perceives me, and these are why I'm putting these walls up, because people are, either people are jerks and I just don't want them around me, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Or, this is just you should know better. You're my friends. So
exactly. Yeah, I 100% agree with you on that front. And also getting Rutherford and Boimler some together time, kind of similar to what Tendi and Mariner got last episode.
Exactly. Yeah. I love when they you guys get to be the badasses. I wrote down it was the. Oh shoot! I called it the cost-benefit analysis canon.
Yeah. I that part of the episode, I will say, I loved that set up and payoff of the compromise in the game and them setting up the Ferengi. I also like that we get the difference between last outpost Ferengi and the different Ferengi.
Okay, so that was the one where my brain goes, I'm gonna jump out of continuity now. It's okay, the last outpost is the name of an episode in TNG. It wasn't a thing in the show. It wasn't. It was it was out external to the Star Trek world. Where did she get that? Where did the last outpost come from?
I did listen to, there was a podcast with, I think it was the Seventh Rule podcast I listened to with Mike McMahon, where he said, he actually called that out. This was actually before this episode came out, but I think he was talking about it in season 1, where he said, the one time that we feel like we somewhat break canon within Star Trek is when we reference titles of episodes. Like there's the one guy in season 1 where he says, "I'm half a rascal," which is a reference. And his explanation is like, yes, that is breaking canon, but the way we sort of make it work is we say that, like, in universe, people would name the logs or the story, like the things that they learn, the same name as the episodes of the show. It's not explicitly stated, but that's how they sort of like smooth over the fact that they're able to do that.
It was really not that big of a deal, but my brain was like, "What? Okay."
yeah. I think it's a clever way to do it. So,
yeah. I love her phrase, like, "Those two beautiful, nerdy men are negotiating us to safety using the power of math."
yeah. Very.
And then I heard Tilly in my head, like, "That's the power of math, people."
Math people, yeah. I will say that conclusion, I think, really worked for me. I thought that was that felt very Star Trek-y, and like they just used the power of math and like on Ferengi's own cultural terms in order to get them to do the right thing.
Yeah. No, it was great. And the fact that the Ferengi kind of went along with it, and it almost felt like they were happy to have an excuse not to be the last outpost Ferengis, if that makes any sense. It's like, this sort of gives us license to be better than we have been. And I know that wasn't probably, that's me reading into it more, but it feels like that's kind of what was great about Starfleet, and when they're good and when they have interactions with people, is that they allow people to be their best selves.
Exactly. I think that really worked for me. That was all really funny. The other thing too that I should mention, kind of on the negative side before I talk about some positives, I also didn't like the whole conceit with like mariners sucking out the blood of Shax. And I hated that because it was so obvious what it was. Again, it was in that misconceit sort of thing where it's like, clearly she's sucking out the blood to save his life. Like, she's not trying to kill Shax randomly in this episode. And it just feels, though killing Shax immediately after, though to be fair, killing off Shax the episode after it comes back I would have thought that would have been kind of funny.
Yes, but, I mean, we had talked about that actually.
yeah. But yeah, no, it was just clear, like setting up more of that misconceit, sort of them sort of not talking to each other thing, which frustrated me. The other thing too, sorry, I'm just gonna roll on a couple negatives here, just because
let's get those out of the way, and then we'll talk about the fun stuff.
Yeah. Two more negatives that I had. One is Shax being back. He's leading the away team, which still leads to this question of where's Kayshawn. And it feels disappointing that we introduced this interesting character, and now he just seems to be completely forgotten.
He was
I don't
doing.
even know if we see it.
No, we do. He was doing karate or whatever the Klingon probably moves are against Jet. When Tandy was looking for getting everybody's medical scans, which we haven't talked about yet.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Which that storyline I actually really liked. We'll talk about that in the positives. But yeah, so it's just sort of like the sidelining of this new interesting character in effort of this return of this character who, honestly, like I said, I like Shax, but I would have preferred him to stay dead. And so I feel like it's a little bit disappointing that we're sort of losing time with a character that I would have really liked a chance to explore more, which hopefully we will. I mean, definitely. There's more episodes this season and another season after that at least that we may get to explore him, but it is saddening that this character who I feel like we were done with is sort of taking time away from a character that I want to get to know.
Well, so I wonder what his role is now, because when Boimler was duplicated, they didn't let him hang around. He had to go back to the Cerritos. So like, what happens when our chief security officer is back from the dead? We don't need you now. Are you just going to hang around? Like, I don't know what his role is now either.
Exactly. So yeah, that's frustrating. And then the only other like major negative that I really had was, and it's not really a negative. It was just more like, huh? We were talking even before this, was the Patinki character.
Yeah.
Which there's that, so they run into the like this archaeologist dude who's like gonna help them out, and it just feels so random, not really following the plot. Like, it's just sort of like, oh, we have 2 or 3 extra minutes that we're just going to toss this extra dude in here and just exists. And he doesn't feel like you and I were talking before we started recording, because I was like asking him, like, I'm sitting, like, I have a fairly encyclopedic knowledge of Star Trek, and I'm sitting here being like, who is this guy, a reference to something?
I think he's
an
external reference.
Of something?
I think he's supposed to be like a Steve Irwin, crocodile hunter, guy type person, because he's a what is it? He's a Tellarites with a Australian accent. So that's where my brain went to, like, okay, anthropologist or whatever who's been in the bush and blah blah blah. And it's like that's another thing.
But
that
doesn't
feels
really
very
have a lot
80s
of
too.
qualifications. Yeah. It's like it wasn't like bad. I didn't find it all that funny.
Well, you knew he was going to die in 2 seconds. I mean, that's like, okay.
Yeah, it just sort of felt like it was there, wasn't really commenting on anything, and it sort of like, again, it doesn't feel as tight as Lower Decks typically is.
Yeah.
It just felt sort of like superfluous, which I looking at every other episode of Lower Decks, one thing I can almost never say about any element of a plot is there's superfluous stuff, and that just felt superfluous.
You could have taken that time and put it in towards making what they were going through with Mariner, like being a little bit more
interesting.
Yeah, exactly.
Fleshed out.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like those are my negatives.
Or Tendi.
For this episode. Yeah. I think those are my negatives on that side of things.
Yeah, I think the same with. Yeah. I kind of think I parallel you.
Yeah. What else? I think some positives, though.
Yes.
Like you said, I know some. I'm sure some people who might be a little bit more prudish might think the Mugato Gumato sex scene was funny, but I thought I kind of found it kind of funny.
Yeah, and the fact that there was somebody watching, it's like, ooh, even the watcher.
Yeah, it's like, oh, this just wants to watch.
Yeah.
That one felt very in line with Gene Roddenberry's vision. But I will say the Tendi plot I thought was really fun.
Yes,
I actually really everything with Tendi's plot was great. It was kind of making fun of this trope that, like, no one on Starfleet ships apparently wants to do their freaking medical thing, even though it's just a simple scan.
Yeah, which like it during
like that's a trope going back to the original series.
Yeah, like in the motion picture, those belt buckles that they have were supposed to be like personal scanners and stuff. So in theory, that they don't even need to have like them come to medical. But yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I remember there's an episode of the original series where McCoy's just going after. I think it was like, what is it, the Corbomite? Is it the Corbomite maneuver? I forget. There's an episode where Kirk is basically like, I don't want to do my medical examination. McCoy's like, Jim, you need to go do it, and he just it's just like a 2-second thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a good trope going all the way back to the original series.
And I loved her little side whenever they show her doing the scan, like when she was on the holodeck and she was hang gliding over Lundy and that girl who were doing like surfing. And just like flies over and scans him, and he's like, whoa, and he falls into the water. And that was great.
I mean, there's got to be some questions. I mean, I guess they're in the military, so I guess there's slightly different ethics. But this does raise the question of what the medical ethics of scanning people without their permission is. I mean, I guess it's slightly different in Starfleet, where you're kind of required to by your job. So I think the question's not totally moot, but it's sort of an interesting, like, I wonder what the ethics of this are.
Well, and then she talked about Dr. Ta'ana said that some people don't like being reduced to a set of numbers. So it's like that's why they maybe are avoiding it. I'm like, that's interesting. Like, yeah, especially because if you transport, you are definitely converted to a set of numbers.
Yep. I also loved the chase sequence with Dr. Ta'ana through that was hilarious, and that Tendi gets her by literally breaking her arm or whatever, or her leg or whatever it was.
And that's where it was interesting. It's like that was predictable, but hilarious and well done. Mm-hmm. Where the predictability of the whole like, oh, she's not a super agent or whatever. It's like that. Okay, it just I don't know. Yeah, that felt
well because I think the difference is like. With Tendi's storyline, the whole storyline, like I kind of figured it was going to be Dr. Ta'ana was the last person. Yeah. Like that felt obvious, but it felt set up. It felt natural to the characters. It felt like it was set up and paid off fairly well. within the episode and sort of naturally paid off. And so yeah, it's not the most surprising storyline of all time, but it feels satisfying and feels character driven.
Exactly.
And we learned something that we didn't know about both of these characters. That Tendi wants to try and impress people, but she will also go as far as she needs to get the job done. That tells us something about her character. So while it's predictable, it teaches us about her character.
Give me 22 cc's of space, people. Love that.
Exactly. Same thing with Dr. Donna.
Yeah.
We learn about her character in a satisfying way that pays off the arc that's here. The stuff with Mariner, Boimler, and Rutherford, the whole thing where they just don't talk to her.
Yeah.
That does not feel like it flows naturally out of the characters, because I feel like the natural thing would have been like they would have gone up to her and said, "Hey, are you a secret agent?" Or would have mentioned it like when they have those several opportunities to throughout the episode.
Yeah.
And so I feel like it doesn't naturally flow. It feels frustrating, and so while that storyline was predictable, it does not feel like it naturally flows and feels as satisfying as the Tendi one, even though they're both probably just as predictable as each other.
Yeah, definitely. I love when Dr. Tiana is like going down the hallway and she's like, "Bad, Dr. Tiana, bad."
Yeah.
Like
just give me all the cat jokes with Dr. Tiana. Yeah. I'm here for them.
There is and I don't remember the name of it now. It's a Discovery era book, I believe. I believe it was set in the 23rd century, but they're talking about Caitians and how they're like, they take advantage of the fact that people, humans especially, think of them as cats, even though they are not. So they'll use that to the advantage of like, oh, I can be cute, I can purr, I can do all this stuff that they think as a cute cat thing, and then it gets me what I want. But they're like, we really aren't cats. You realize that, right? Kind of a thing.
Was that
It was the
Die Standing?
Yes, that's what
the Emperor's Georgiou one.
Yep, because we saw the Cation in both universes.
Yep. Die Standing by John Jackson Miller. That was very, very good book.
I really enjoyed that one. Yeah.
John Jackson Miller. Speaking of that, his recently, this is a sidetrack, but he just released another one, Star Trek Picard: Rogue Elements.
It's so good.
Rios. It's excellent.
Yes.
I recorded my review a day or so ago. It's probably going to go up next week or something like that.
Good.
That book is excellent. That is a masterpiece. He really nailed that book.
And I love the going back to something from TOS, which I won't spoil it for anybody, but it works so well to see like, oh yes, that totally makes sense that would be the evolution of this thing.
Exactly. I 100% agree.
So that's vague posting there, vague commenting.
Without going to the holodeck piece is what you're talking about.
Oh yeah,
yeah, it's excellent. Yeah. If listeners go, if you're a Star Trek Picard, even if you're not a Star Trek Picard fan, to be kind of honest with you, the Rios novel that just came out, Rogue Elements, and John Jackson Miller, excellent book.
It also made me like the ship. Like before, it's like it just like felt sort of like the La Serena was sort of like it's just a cargo ship and it's kind of got a cool outside. But it never felt like an Enterprise or
a place.
Defiant. Yeah, this, I'm like, oh my god, if all of this information could be put into the show somehow, that would be fantastic, because that has filled it out for me. So now, at least when I watch Picard, I will have all that in back of my head.
Yeah, exactly.
So, anyway.
Though I will say, considering the fact that we are kind of getting off sidetrack here from Lower Decks, I feel like that probably... No. I think that probably is indicative. Like, I think we're kind of wrapping out our discussion here. So I want to ask, is there anything more about this episode that you want to mention? Or
there's a couple references and stuff that I think were kind of fun. We saw Denobulans, blah, 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 blah.
They puffed up?
Yes.
They did the puff up?
Yep. That was great. And they were talking about Ractigino, and it's like, she's like, oh, I've tried human coffee. It's too weak, And then in the bar, I don't know if anybody noticed it, there's a Kazinti in Starfleet.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, in the background, wandering around when we first see Boimler and Rutherford. And Otis, who's looking for some Pepperidge Farm cookies. That was, I don't understand that accent.
It was a choice. It was a choice.
I want that diplomat game though. I think that could be kind of fun to convert to something that's playable. So they were.
The whole point of it is to like both be disappointed by the end.
I don't remember who it was, but it was like I want to say 3rd or 4th grade. There was a teacher that basically said if everybody is mildly unhappy at the end of some whatever it is, you've probably all succeeded. And so that has stuck in my head for decades. And so when I saw that, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a game created by my 3rd grade teacher.
That's hilarious. Yeah, I've heard. I think my teacher said something similar about that. Yeah. So yeah, I think. I think. Like I said, I think my final thoughts on it are just sort of overall thoughts. Like I said, this is probably my least favorite episode of Lower Decks so far. I found it to be a little bit more unfocused and less tightly written as other episodes of Lower Decks have been. But that being said, the worst episode of Lower Decks is still a solid episode of television.
Yes.
So I enjoyed it. I didn't love it, but I still enjoyed it. But I do have sort of larger critiques on it.
Well, there's one small subplot that we didn't really discuss. Was the guy who was on the planet trying to buy Gorn horns, the Mugato horns, who takes off, and the Cerritos is like, "Oh, hey, hello, what are you doing?" And he says, he was just what did he say? They ask him a question or whatever. He goes like, "I'm not answering, not interested," just like. The way he said that was just weird. But so basically he's pulling a scam that like the same way that people do on freeways in Los Angeles. It's just basically the car breaks down and then they blame you for an accident or something. This is basically his ship explodes and they blame the Cerritos. And she's like, the person who was tractoring the ship in, it's like, I used the lowest tractor factor. That's great. But yeah, so he basically was blackmailing them into giving him a shuttle and a bunch of crap from all the stuff from the ready room and the captains, and it turns out that this is actually a scam that he's been pulling, because we hear from the captain's husband, the admiral, basically saying that, hey, just be on the lookout that this is happening. Oh yeah, I totally keep an eye out. And then they stop him and basically say, you know what, you're going to do some good, and they make him do public service back on the planet, basically. Setting up for the preserve.
Yeah, I thought that was a clever episode. I think two things with that. I think one that just is kind of funny because it makes sense. Like Starfleet ships blow up other people's ships all the time, and it feels like just give them a shuttle. We have a billion of those.
Can we do that?
That was good. And then I also think there's an interesting, nice little services a nice little arc here, because there's kind of been the background piece going on here where Captain Freeman is sort of up for a promotion, kind of.
Yep.
And so I think that this sort of is feeding into that arc a little bit. So it kind of is a nice little piece of like Captain Freeman trying to appear her best to the higher echelon of Starfleet, which I think is kind of just a nice little continuity piece.
What is it? Her reputation.
Her reputation.
At least. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think, but that it's a short little aside thing, but I think it worked because it was like a nice little meta commentary on some like conceits within Star Trek, while also furthering sort of a background arc we have going on with Freeman. So
it's like the second time in a row, so that's kind of cool. Yeah,
I think that they're really without knowing too far ahead. I think I've only seen one more episode after this point because of the screeners that we have. But beyond that, I really think that'll probably be. I can see that sort of being like where the end of the season is going is something with Captain Freeman sort of getting a promotion or not.
I'm going to assume after the next episode that we'll just be getting them one at a time and not in a bunch of five, probably.
And we'll see. Yeah, we got a whole bunch. Listeners, yeah, we at the beginning of the season, before all of you got to see the episodes, we got 5 episodes at once, which was nice, but it was sort of like, oh gosh, we kind of have to sit on these for forever.
Yeah, part of me didn't want to, I mean, I did sort of meter them out because it's like, I don't want to be that far ahead of everybody. It was just like, I want enough that we can record comfortably and not have to worry about scrambling, but at the same time, it's just like I kind of enjoy that, like being as surprised as everybody else.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you. But for first world problems, like, oh, I've got too many episodes too early. Oh, woe is me.
Yeah. No, that does sound a little bit like bragging. That was not what that was meant to be.
No. I don't think that's what you were just being honest about your fans. I wasn't saying it was bragging, but it was also it's also just a funny problem.
Yeah. No, definitely.
It's a lucky problem to have, I think.
It's interesting too when you're like in the creative world. Like I've worked on projects where I have to know information ahead of time because I'm working on a design or whatever, and there are times where it's just like, I don't want to know this at the same time. It's like I was doing comic book covers for the Star Trek Green Lantern, and it's just like, oh, now I know the plot. Okay, it's like I don't get to be as surprised as everybody just reading through it. So.
Yeah, I had a similar thing. I was working at The Advocate, the LGBTQ magazine, when Star Trek Discovery Season 1 was coming out. And so we we did like a big cover story on Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz being the first like explicitly gay couple in Star Trek main characters. And because of that, we got a few episodes ahead. And so we had just done that cover, and it was like this big celebration of that. And then we got the episode where it was like, oh, he dies. And where Culber dies, and you're like, wow, so we just did this whole cover, and now they're doing a Bury Your Gay storyline, so we just kind of have to stay quiet about it, but very pissed off. So, it was a whole thing.
No, totally.
So
I mean, this episode definitely taught us that, you know, capitalism is the answer to all of our problems. Because they save animals.
Star Trek way.
Yeah, exactly. And to you know, bring that into the real world, we're sponsored by Fansets. And you can get a discount on buying lots of stuff, so don't do that. Now, there are some great pins and like just cool things from other series, which I really enjoyed. There's a lot of Irwin Allen, so there's like Time Tunnel and Land of the Giants, things that I grew up as a little kid. There's Batman. There's also, you know, basically DC Comics, but they have a whole new set of pins, and I believe that Noah Averback Katz just did a stream where he was showing some of the stuff that they either are coming out soon or that they gave him.
Noah Averback Katz being the who played the Andorian Rin in Star Trek Discovery.
Correct.
Just for folks who don't know, and is also a wonderful human being and big Trekkie himself.
And he will be on Infinite Trek when we actually, now that you and I are well, we'll be able to reschedule that.
Sick and dying.
Yes. We're going to do a roundtable about headcanon, which will be a lot of fun, I think. And he's going to join us. He's got some really interesting headcanon ideas about Tilly. So I can't wait to hear that.
Yes. It should be fun.
But yeah, so if you would like to get, you know, a little discount on your order at Fansets, put in the code DRAWN, all one word, all caps, and you'll get 10% off anything that you order.
And like I will say, I do not approve of capitalism, but if we exist in a capitalist world, spend your money on pins, and
get money,
get
a discount on them at the same time.
Exactly. Beat capitalism. Do it. This is that's how that works, right?
Something like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that's how that works. Yeah, we're beating capitalism with promos. That I think it totally makes sense.
Sure.
But seriously, Fansets. Seriously, I do think they make good stuff. So I fully support.
And I like the fact that they are actually literally our fans. These aren't people who are just like, I'm just cranking out stuff because this is what the kids like now or whatever. It's just like, these people are fans of pretty much everything that they bring to it. So I think that's where the energy to do these things comes from, which is great.
Yep. I 10,000% agree.
Cool. So that sounds like we're probably wrapping up at this point. I can't think of anything else to go to.
You want to just promote anything you want to promote?
Well, just make sure that, you know, because we're only on episode 6, I believe. So if you get a chance, if you could go to iTunes and give us a review and ratings, that would definitely help.
Do it.
Yeah, and then like we were saying before, Infinite Trek, which is our monthly roundtable podcast that wasn't quite as monthly because people were ill and then there was convention stuff happening. We're going to be doing that rescheduled in the next couple weeks to talk about headcanon, and then we'll basically pick a new topic every month. And I'm guessing that by the time we get into the next month, we might talk about Prodigy, because Prodigy just released their intro
opening, which looks gorgeous.
Yeah, and Darren and I will be talking about that. Darren Moser is going to be the co-host for Prodigy, but that should be coming up, I'm guessing, at the end of the run of.
It's probably would come out some point very soon after Lower Decks ends. If I had to play, they haven't announced yet, but I would place bets on it. So.
So that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can follow me at GeekFilter. And I did not do an Easter egg list for the last episode, but for the next episode, I'm going to do a list.
Yeah. Well, for me, you can follow me at Jesse Gender on YouTube, Twitter, all those fun things. My YouTube channel is where I do my sort of video essay format, talking about social and political issues through nerddoms and geekdoms, mainly LGBTQ and trans issues, but not exclusively, and mainly Star Trek, but also not exclusively. So yeah, that's sort of my main stuff. And I also have another podcast you can listen to called What the Frel, which is a Farscape rewatch podcast that I do with the wonderful Council of Geeks, another LGBTQ YouTuber. And that's a lot of fun. And that's my stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely check that out. I love Farscape.
Yeah, Farscape's great. We're near. We just finished season 3 of the show, and now
Oh, wow.
we're getting into the final season of the show, which I'm kind of sad about.
Yeah.
But we do have plans. There is a plan to continue after What the For All is done with a different show that we're not going to spoil.
Where we just watch them backwards.
Yeah, we just go from the end and go right back to the beginning. No, we're gonna keep the podcast going,
Cool.
but with a different science fiction show. But I won't spoil it yet, 'cause
okay.
we're gonna reveal it later on. So
What the frack? No. Just going through
that
different...
was that.
Sorry.
Yeah. There is a plan. I should say.
Oh. Has it happened before, and will it happen again?
I don't know. I can't say anything.
Well, thank you so much. This was, as much as the episode was kind of like, this was a really fun conversation.
Yeah, I think, like I said, the episode, like I said, better than any other show, but probably the weakest episode of Lower Decks so far. So
Yeah. Well, thank you very much, and I guess a lot of things. I think the only thing left to say is live long and prosper.
Cool.
Did
Sweet.
you want to say live long and prosper? Or
No.
Okay.
It's just you.
Just me?
And leave this in the podcast. Just in the podcast. I'm gonna leave you hanging.
I think awkwardness must be our brand.
Exactly. My brand is Star Trek transness and awkwardness. That's basically it. All right. Bye, everybody. Live long and prosper.
Don't you give me that sarcastic Vulcan salute! Coconut!